Well, welcome everyone to another episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. I'm Jose Palomino, your host, and today's guest is Steven Hoffman, or Captain Hoff, as he's often called, President, CEO, and founder of Founders Space. And Steven works primarily, but not exclusively, with startups. But what we're going to tap into today's conversation is how to think like a startup. So many of you might be in companies, you've been around for a long time, you've been doing what you're doing for a long time, maybe you've hit that plateau. Maybe you wonder, how does that competitor of mine come up with new ideas? Well, strap in and we're going to listen directly from Steven Hoffman how thinking like a startup is not only possible, but he'll actually walk us through a couple of the key steps and how to get there in your company. So listen in, let's welcome our guest right now. Well, welcome, Steven, to the Revenue Throughput Podcast.
Fantastic to be here.
Wow, no, it's great for us to have you here as well. Now, Steven, just for our audience, it's always good to get context from our guests. So just who do you serve and what do you do for them? And I know in your world that might be a number of audiences, but let's think about what you're most excited about right now.
So I am a venture capitalist. So I work with startups. I fund startups. I also run a global startup incubator and accelerator. So we have over 50 partners in 22 countries. I am working with startups all over the globe, many of them focused B2B, how to go out there and get and grow their businesses, scale their businesses. I'm also an author. So I've published 3 different books. My most recent one is Surviving a Startup, which gives entrepreneurs everything they need to know to not only survive, but actually get ahead.
Wow. So, Steven, you know startups, and you know that whole heady early days, right? So, my world and many of our listeners' world is a little bit down the road from there, right? So typically, it's 10 years, 20 years. In some cases, it's my dad's business, and I've taken it over. It's at the 50-year industrial kind of company. And what I have found is one of the hardest things is to get that audience really to start thinking strategically with a clean sheet of paper. So in effect, if I can borrow a term, thinking like a startup, right? So I'd like to dig into that with you a little bit. Like, what are some of the attributes of a startup mindset versus a maintenance mindset? And what do you see there as being some of the things that actually create opportunity and create a more successful future?
Startups are hungry. Startups, when you begin a startup, you have nothing. That means you have nothing to lose. Like, you're looking at the marketplace and you're saying, where can I make a buck? What can I do? What new technologies are out there that will give me that competitive edge? Now, when you have a lot of revenue coming in, you're on top of the market, you have customers, you often lose that hunger, that drive, that desire to go out there and experiment, try crazy stuff that other people aren't trying. Look at new technologies and see, how will these technologies change the market? How can I deliver more value than anybody else out there? That is the mindset that startups have.
Well, and with a lot of established businesses, let me put it this way: a lot, not all, but certainly more than a few. It's not that they're not hungry, but they haven't been exercising those muscles. It's kind of they've atrophied, and they're actually concerned. In some cases, the last 2 years have been either very successful for some and very tragic for others. I mean, it's just kind of how, depending if you were selling plexiglass in February 2020, all things were good, right, at that point. But I guess my point is, how do you go back when you have a $10 million company? You have something to lose. Right, you have payroll, you have rent to pay, or you're leasing big machines. How do you get that spark back?
So I work with startups all the time, and I also work with a lot of medium-sized and large companies, and they face this challenge. They have a decent business, but they see that business decelerating. It's not growing how it used to grow, and I tell them, what you have to do is you have really 2 businesses. You have one business that is going, it's going relatively strong, but it's not growing like it used to. That to survive in the future, you need to grow. So there are a couple strategies. Number one, you can break off a team. a team inside your organization that goes out there and looks for new opportunities, looks at your strengths, what your business has, your relationships, and then also goes beyond that. Really, I tell businesses, the answers don't come from you. You do not have the answers because you're running your business the way you've always run it, and you have it under control. But that's not where the answers are. If you are going to innovate, if you're going to break out, you need to go to the most important people who know the answers, and those are your customers. You need to not service your customers. You need to engage your customers in a deep dialogue about what they want from the market in the future that they aren't getting from you or anybody else out there. Now, I will tell you, everybody, people don't see opportunities, but opportunities are being created literally every hour of the day. And that's because technology is advancing. Right. Every time new technologies are born, and these are coming out faster than ever before in history, these new technologies allow people to do things differently, create new value, and improve processes that are already in place. And if you don't have your eye on that ball, then you aren't going to see those technologies and how they're emerging. And if you don't know what your customers really need and what outcomes they want, I always say, when you go to your customer, they're not going to tell you how to innovate. Like, they're not going to come up with that brilliant idea and just lay it in your lap for you to implement. What they're going to do is say, look, we have this headache, like we have this problem, like we have all these different pieces and they aren't quite working together. Or they'll tell you the outcome they want. We want our manufacturing to be more efficient, or we want, we're stuck in a revenue trough ourselves. We need to boost our own revenue. How can we do that with our business? You from the outside, if you can go in and start to provide those solutions to them, boom, if there's more than one customer like that, there's a market, then you will grow as big as that market is and as fast as you can execute on that market.
Well, and I can already hear in my head, my seasoned owner radar says, somebody said, if I start asking customers what their problems are, they're going to expect that I'm going to solve them for them. And maybe I can't. So am I not better off just let me stick to the knitting, what I know well, and just really service the heck out of what I'm already doing?
That is not the right attitude. If you're afraid that you're going to have to solve your customers' problems, if they have problems, you need to know about them. Your customers are realistic. They know you can't solve every problem they have, and it's not your business to solve every problem they have. What you need to narrow down are what are the high value problems, the problems that are so painful or so valuable to them that they're chomping at the bit. Like, if you could get this done, I really need this. And it can't just be one customer. You have to go out there and talk to a lot and start to figure out, wow, there's a real need for this. All these people have deployed these systems in this way, these new IoT systems, but they aren't really working for them. They're missing this one piece. And if we came in there with that piece, they will pay us and they will love us. So that's your business. At the end of the day, I see the entrepreneur's job, and all of us are entrepreneurs. Doesn't matter if we're in a Fortune 500 company or a tiny company, we are all entrepreneurs. The entrepreneur's job is to look and discover pent-up demand. Is there demand being created in the marketplace that isn't being served? If you can meet that demand, boom, you unleash a gusher, right? And that propels you. That's what propels business. Demand propels business.
So that's interesting because you often hear some of the language like creating demand. And you're saying, well, you know what? Maybe we don't actually create demand as much as we find where there's a desire to solve a particular kind of problem. So better detective work than we're going to be Michelangelo creating great new art. It's more about, let's find out where the problems really are.
This is a myth. There is a myth out there that we create demand. No company creates demand. Companies create products that meet demand. The demand is already in the marketplace. And people might not know it. They might not realize they need it until they see it because they can't imagine it. But when they see it, they're like, oh my God, it's like when you first saw a smartphone. Mm-hmm. Was there a demand for smartphones? Well, yes, people wanted a better phone, a phone that could do all these things, but there was no marketplace. So you didn't see that demand out there. But the demand existed, and people like Steve Jobs saw how to pull together all the pieces, put them in a package, show them to people, and that demand was already there. He didn't create it. He didn't go around evangelizing and converting people to want smartphones. They wanted them when they saw them.
I remember I had lunch. I think this maybe in '99 or 2000 with a mentor of mine, and he had a Palm Pilot, he had a phone, and he had a notepad. And I remember him saying, one day these things are going to be in one thing, right? And then I was thinking, well, that's going to be really hard to pull off. Of course, I'm thinking logically based on where things are today. And of course, he was just a few years ahead. He should have been the guy, right? But it's funny, it's interesting. So there was definitely an interest. To your
Right.
point, people were trying to solve those issues by other means, but carrying five things around instead of the one thing that could do it all.
And innovation isn't hard. A lot of times they're just missing one piece. If you could make it just a little easier than what they're doing now, that could make an enormous difference in attracting your existing customers, getting them to pay more and engage you more, and getting new customers. Look at simple solutions like Dropbox. Dropbox wasn't so unique, right? They had X Drive and other products before that you did cloud storage in the early days, but they were clunky. They were hard to use. Dropbox came along, and so the demand wasn't fully formed. Like there weren't a lot of people using those products because they weren't that great, but the demand was there. I mean, we all, as we can see today, the cloud is everything, right? But at that time, people didn't know it. But Dropbox made it very simple. They just took what was already out there, that idea, just like you said, the Palm Pilot was before the iPhone, right? Mm-hmm. They took that idea and they made it really work for the customer. That's what really innovative companies do.
Well, and it's funny because I think back to when I first I looked at Dropbox, and I looked at a few of these things, and then one day I just noticed how Dropbox explained basically you just set up you set up your documents in this drive, and it magically happens. It just happens. And the first time I tested it, and I tested it on my phone, I had to find a document on my phone that I had stored, and I didn't mail it to myself or anything, and it was just there. And I said, "That's amazing." And sure enough, I had a complete hard drive failure. And I was back up and running in a matter of hours. Just it all synced back up. And from then on, it's like, I'll never not be with this solution. So it's just an interesting point.
It is so true. And it's true with every business out there. So if you're a B2B company, right, and you want to grow your revenue, like you are determined to do that, there are companies waiting for you to come along and ask them the right questions. And so that they can tell you what they really need and you can build it for them. That they're just waiting. If you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. So if you want to grow your business, the beautiful thing is if you have a company and you have existing cash flow and you're cash flow positive, put that money to work.
Wow. Well, yeah, put it to work. So one of the investments you're calling out up front is you may have to allocate some headcount, some time on the work clock to some group of people to do the outreach, to talk to people and so on. Do you think in an owner-led business that should be the owner calling customers, making these inquiries? Or can it literally be somebody designated who doesn't make the customer feel like I'm just being pitched, aren't I? As opposed, because that's
I totally know. Totally get it. Look, you're not here to sell the customer on anything, right? Because this is a process of discovery. So I wrote a whole book on this. It's called Make Elephants Fly, The Process of Radical Innovation. And I've consulted with a lot of companies, from startups all the way up to like Bosch and Huawei and, Qualcomm was our customer, these huge companies, right, on innovation, how they put innovation to work. And I will tell you that your job is never to sell. And this is the mistake most companies make. They think they have to come up with the idea, like they have to come up with this brilliant idea, and then they go out and they try to sell it to all their customers. And that is completely backwards because you're coming up with the idea. And what you come up with isn't necessarily what they want. And as soon as you go into sales mode, you stop listening. So you stop getting the feedback to really create where the demand is, what they really want. I will tell you, ideas aren't important. Don't go to all your employees and say, give us your best ideas. I mean, you could do this, but what they think are the best ideas aren't always the best ideas. You only know if an idea is great by your customer's reaction. If you bring them an idea and they go, oh, that's nice, come back later when it's done. And you get 100 customers to tell you that's nice, come back later when it's done. you are dead in the water. Like nobody wants that. Nice to have is death, because nobody wants a product that's nice to have. What you need to get, when you show them, if you have an idea and you show it to them, you don't need to sell them. You just need to wait and watch their reaction. If they go, oh my God, I love this. Can I get an early version of it? How do I get on board? Can I beta test this? What do I do? Then you have something. You have something. If you don't get that reaction, then you need to take the approach I said and actually figure out what they really do need. Like, what is that thing that when it comes across their plate, they just lunge at it? How do you do this? You don't do this, sitting at your computer, Googling, brainstorming sessions. They don't work that well. What you actually do is you need, and you don't get all your employees to submit ideas. What you need to do is figure out, get innovators on your team. You may have them already. You said the entrepreneur or the CEO, the leader of the company, should they be the innovator? Well, if they're super innovative, yes, but they don't have to be the innovator. Their job is to get the right people on board. Their job isn't to do all this stuff. This stuff takes a lot of time. So ultimately, they probably don't even have the time to do it. What they really need to do is go to their employees and not pick and look for the ones who are always challenging orthodoxy, who are always coming up with new ideas, who are always pushing. They're real pushers. They're like, we need to do this. We need to do this. Like, why aren't we doing this? This type of person in your organization, you need to take them off, empower them to go out into the marketplace and discover something.
And quickly, Steven, what's fascinating about that employee can sometimes be seen as the difficult employee.
Absolutely. Like a lot of these employees quit after a certain amount of time because they're frustrated. The business is, it's not exciting to them. It's doing this. They see all these things they could do and they're not allowed to do them. So you can actually harness that resource instead of allowing it to go away, and empower those people. They could be senior executives. They could be a very junior person. Like it really innovative, creative people can come into your company at all levels. The other thing, if you don't have these people on board, then you need to go out and look for them. And, it's not easy. Hiring great, innovative people it's not going to happen overnight. You need to make it a priority, get these people on your team. And how you get them is not money. You get them by saying, look, we want, these people want to create. They want to go out there and try something new. They are looking for a job that will give them that experience, allow them to achieve something really important, what they feel is important. You need to find people who want that and align with your business and give them the opportunity to do that. So they don't necessarily have to be expensive. They could be young college grads, who are really into technology and just want that opportunity, and they have all these ideas. And when you bring them into your business, they're really excited about, changing things. Bring them in, put them in a separate unit and give them the resources they need, like they were a startup in your organization, to go out there into the marketplace and start experimenting, start exploring, start asking people and discovering and putting together the pieces so that they can come up with a new business that can then transform your existing business.
Wow. Well, Steven, two things that really popped out in what you just described. One is nice to have. The way you described it just sounded like somebody going on, some young person, right, going on a date and being told, well, let's just be friends.
Yes.
It's nice to have, right?
Nobody wants to insult you. So they're going to say, oh, that's nice, come back later. Come back later means get out of my face.
Right. That's the polite way to say it. Wouldn't spend a dime on this if it was available. That's true, right? So if you give it to me free, I'll take it. Yeah, anybody will take something for free. That doesn't do us any good. Right. That's interesting because it's so interesting. I teach a class on entrepreneur marketing at Villanova for the graduate school, and we were going over MVP, right? So the minimum viable product, and somebody told me at their big, and a lot of these MBA students are like a corporate sponsor, right? So his big company he worked with, he says, we do an MVP, but we give it away for free. And I said, that's not an MVP because that didn't cost literally, who wouldn't take free something, even if you have no idea how you're going to use it. So we actually had a little bit of energy around that conversation. I just said, that's just not an MVP. Maybe that's an indicator they don't loathe it, but it's certainly not, which is good to know that they don't loathe your idea. But but it certainly doesn't have that energy that you've described. So quickly, Stephen, so here's a thought, right? So not every company has an R&D technological bent, right? So clearly, they might provide an industrial service, they do some manufacturing, which is pretty technological, but they're not actually creating new technology per se. Are there opportunities to innovate in the service dimension? Just how you do what you do.
Absolutely. So innovation isn't restricted to developing new technology. In fact, most innovators out there don't develop any technology. What they do is they take existing pieces that are already out there and piece them together and solve problems in the world using something other people develop. Think about it, like AI. AI is an amazing technology, but AI has been around since the 1950s, 70 years. And it took 70 years to mature. You don't have to develop these technologies. They take a long time. What you need to do, there is plenty of technology out there, different pieces that other people have already built that you can go and actually use in a service context. How can you do customer service better? Are you going to just do it the old way, like, with call centers and all this stuff? Or are you going to figure out a new way where maybe, somebody has built an IoT device, sensors that you could put in customers' factory floors to give them data, and then, all this stuff, and then you can create an online portal for them. You don't need a lot of technology to do that. A lot of this stuff, fortunately, the infrastructure is like AWS, Amazon, all these cloud infrastructure, Microsoft, it's all there. You just need to get a couple kind of routine engineers who can implement this once you figure out what that customer needs. And also, a lot of innovation doesn't happen with technology at all. It's just the way you do stuff, because their business might be burdened by a lot of new technology, and that creates problems for them. And you can come in there as a service provider and say, look, we figured out how to make your business much more efficient, how to actually take this information you're getting and make it actionable, how to, allow you to reach out to your customers in a better way, because we have figured this out for ourselves and we will assist you with that. There are so many opportunities right now in ways that require very little to no technology.
Well, and I've seen examples of this. For example, I work with a contract manufacturer, and they had problem with on-time delivery. And then we just said, well, why don't we just put up a Google Doc with like the job so that your customers can see a Google Doc. So no fancy technology, no giant ERP rewrites.
Right, you don't need that. Yeah.
It was a spreadsheet built over the weekend, shared with their top customers, and top customers said, this is amazing. This is much better than we get from anyone else.
Right, and it's, you're just using Google Docs, but none of their customers are doing that, right? None of their other suppliers, their vendors are doing that.
It just changed the game.
And they're like, well, of course we'd work with you. You guys are like, you're giving us the information we need in a very easy way for us to access. Yeah, it doesn't take technology at all, but you're using technology. You're leveraging Google and all the infrastructure they've made.
Right.
So these new technologies are out there. Put them to use. You don't have to build them.
Yeah, but you don't have to build them from scratch. Clearly,
Yeah.
Stephen, there's so much we could continue digging in. This is a really rich topic. So thank you so much for sharing with our listeners, thinking like a startup. And your book is Make Elephants Fly. One of the books. You've written several. So if somebody listening, and I'm sure people listening say, wow, this guy Stephen really has this thing dialed in. They want to know more about your work, possibly contact you. Where should they go?
Well, you can come to my company, foundersspace.com. You can contact me there. If you want to contact me, we have all the books like Make Elephants Fly, Surviving a Startup, my new one, The 5 Forces, which is coming out. All of it is there. And I'm also on all the social networks. Just search for Founderspace.
Founderspace, fantastic. Steven Hoffman, thank you for sharing your wisdom and your insights with us at the Revenue Throughput Podcast. Really appreciate it.
It's been great. Thank you.